Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jacob Restituto, and I'm a musician from Northport, New York. And today we have the absolute pleasure of having Malachi O'Connor here on the channel, coming in from California today. And I'm in New York, so we got the time difference, and we're going to have a great conversation. I appreciate you relatively on the earlier side taking the
Yeah,
time in California to chat with me today.
dude, it's a pleasure, man. It's an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. So, for the people that aren't super familiar with you and your career in the music industry, can you familiarize them a little bit so that they just tell them about your story?
Yeah, it's sweet. So, I mean, I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm in the pop music scene. I'm all relatively new, I would say. I mean, I've only really been doing this thing for, the past 1 or 2 years on the professional side of this. So, yeah, man. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm with is along the lines of like the pop R&B, I just finished up my second tour just literally this past Monday.
Wow.
I was doing a summer tour with Forrest. So it was I mean, it's awesome. I mean, this is the thing to do, man.
I love
Yeah.
that, man. So, I want to get into that in your drumming. For those that don't know,
Yeah.
you're a drummer.
Yeah. Oh
In
yeah, I play
Force,
drums. Yeah.
but you're also a producer. So I want to take it before we get into that and the drumming for Forrest Frank and the touring and stuff. I want to hear a little bit more about like how you got into the music scene and what that role looked like in growing up, or if you've always been into it or hadn't. So just tell me, take it back and talk to me about the process of where you started to now touring with Forrest Frank and all the other things you're doing.
Yeah, dude. So I mean, it's the biggest broken record thing, but I just got in love with music and I started playing at church. Um, I think I was 12 when I started playing drums. So, and then, once anybody within, your youth group finds that you're playing an instrument, they're
Yeah,
like, all right, dude, get up there, start playing. So,
100%.
yeah, so that's what happened to me. And then, I just kind of grew up playing, whether that be at the youth group, main service, whatever. Like that was definitely like a huge part. I would say the biggest part, because I wasn't in any high school band, I grew up homeschooled. So, I mean, this whole, it was the church,
Hmm.
um, which is a huge, part of me and my identity. But, another part of it is, being able to be there and serve and being able to play, do something that you absolutely love to do, which is play music. So,
Yeah, I relate to that tremendously. Growing up in the church as well, and I started the youth group band. We didn't have a band at the time, and when I was in youth group, we
yeah,
were watching YouTube videos, and I was like, "Well, we gotta change this."
yeah,
So,
yeah,
me and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, started the youth group band a long, long time ago, and it kind of grew from there. So I, the same as you, grew up and still play in church. Relatively often.
yeah. Um, and then, man, I think it really just all started like out spurting from, playing at, the main church that I've grown up at and been for, over most of my life. Or outside of that, you'd start playing at maybe other churches because, someone needs to fill a role. And then once you start doing that, I think for me, it was like probably when I was like maybe 18 or 19. That's when, you would start getting asked to, oh, come play at this summer camp, for a
Hmm.
while. So I think, growing up, playing at church, junior high, high school days, that was it. Once you start to, go into, your post high school days, that's, I was definitely asked to play at, summer camps for 2 or 3 years, just really, really just put my time and effort of
Yeah.
just I think it's the whole summer camp thing super cool because it's a lot like touring where you have to play, like 1 or 2 sets a day. You're kind of stuck with a bunch of people in some like close confined area and stuff, and it's like, okay, there's so many different personalities, there's so many different things that you have to kind of like go through, and be able to navigate. So, I say a huge, huge part of what got me here now is playing at just Christian summer camps.
So what were you doing in between then? So you graduated from high school, and then do you go to college? Do you not go to college? Do you pursue music full time? What did that look
Oh
like?
yeah, that's a big question.
Yeah.
um, for me, yeah, for me, I didn't go to college. I was one of those things where, I think when you're at like senior high school and you kind of have everyone else being, having their places where they know that they're going to go, and
Hmm.
they're, then it's not even that, it's also the parents thing. Not only, you know, it's like their parents, being like, oh, your friend is just going to try to do some rock and roll, whatever.
So you graduate from high school, and then what was the plan, and what actually manifested? Like, what was the day to day in the process? I'm trying to build a picture for the listener so that they can see, like if they want to be in a position one day where you are, what were the steps that you particularly took to get there?
I'd say probably I was sold on being a professional musician. I would say sophomore year of high school.
Okay,
So
cool.
from on then, I was like, oh, sweet. I'm gonna go, and I'm the huge biggest fan of, watching, whether it be like Devin Taylor play drums or like Aaron Spears play drums, or, all these guys. Like I was sold just from day one of being like, all right, I'm gonna do exactly what they did. And it's, great, sweet. No one this is the biggest, craziest road that there is no one way to get to it.
Sure,
Um,
absolutely.
but for me, where my family was at and where my heart was at, I was like, okay, I live in Los Angeles already, you know. I really do believe that, this is what I'm called to do. So I'm not gonna go and pay, a ton of money. It's so much to debt for, 4 years of college, which is a great option. I will absolutely say it's a great option. But I would say for me, man, I mean, it was just the right choice, and it was definitely, a scary choice to go to and go down. But I definitely, it's just one of those things that you just really have to drive down and know that this is your passion.
Sure.
And if it really is the thing that you want to do, like, you absolutely just go for it.
So what did that look? How did you? What was the first step that you took to, find a professional recording gig, or what did that look like the day to day?
Dude, I mean, so this right here is where the reality starts to hit in of your,
Hmm.
you being like, all right, sick, I'm gonna go do this thing, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go be this. And then, you try to wait, 3 or 4 months, and you got, nothing. And you're
yeah.
like, all right, what, how do you do this thing? I'd say for me, it really started out with just the people who I already knew at church. So those guys, were the ones, who got me to start playing at the summer camps, who got me to start playing at, other churches around the area. Those are also the guys that, like I played in, a couple bands, in like probably 2022, 2023, when I was like 18 or 19, or like, yeah, yeah, around that time. So I think it was mainly already kind of like I was set in this area. So I already met these dudes, who got me the experience of playing out in, the LA like club scene, and, playing out like in those spots. So I think that was like kind of my first step, was kind of already knowing, you know, the guys. And I would not say, when I mean like playing, in like the LA clubs, I'm not saying like these already huge, like 300 people shows or anything. It was probably the reality of starting to play music is going to these, gigs at some random bar and only having
Yeah,
5 people there.
yeah,
More people on the stage than there are in the
yeah,
audience. That's the reality of
yeah,
it,
for
that is
sure.
the reality of it. And I'd say for me, that was like a huge point of my life and what I was, really thinking about, doing. Like, this is what that stuff like that is what makes you make those conscious decisions that will, put you above anyone else. Is
Hmm.
because if you're able to go to those shows, that there is literally, you're just playing to just the bartenders.
Yeah,
If you go to those shows, have the best time, and by the end of it, sure, you feel, discouraged. Sure, you could feel all those feelings and emotions. But if you have the perseverance of saying, hey, I still love this thing and I'm still going to pursue this passion, that right there is, above anything, that is what's going to, keep you going.
hmm,
Yeah. So for me, kept playing in that area, kept doing those things. Um, So I'd say that's like was those were my first steps within,
Mm.
my career before,
Did you have a day job at the time, or was music your full time gig?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean full time, I everything still is, a huge part-time gig, I would feel like. But
Even now with touring, like with Forrest Frank and all that, you would consider that like part time?
it's turning. I mean, nowadays I'm very, very blessed that it's definitely it's turning to a full-time thing. But I would say, back then, oh yeah, I think I was still working at Chick-fil-A. I got a job at Chick-fil-A when I was like 16, and I was kind of riding through with that until maybe I was 19. And
Mm-hmm.
then I quit to be like, all right, sweet, I'm gonna take that time to push, put it more in towards music.
Yeah,
And that's when it starts to get scary, is when, you
yeah,
don't really have money to pay for car insurance and stuff. And then
yeah,
you're like, all right, what do I do?
yeah, yeah. So
um,
what did you particularly do?
so what I did I particularly do? I mean,
Like, how did you end up paying for car insurance when you quit Chick Fil A?
it's one of those things where you just gotta find, okay, here's the church gig that I'm,
Mm-hmm.
at. Here is,
Piecing
here's
things
the
together.
yeah, here's the little, $50 gig that I got.
Yeah,
Here's the one good recording session, that I was able
yeah.
to maybe squeeze a couple hundred out of.
Yeah, exactly. So now, how do you go from playing those small gigs to, in front of just the bartender, to then, how did you get acquainted with Forrest Frank, and how do you find going on tour? Like, how does that process look?
So that right there is the leap. Um, and I'd say these type of leaps is something that for me at least, it only started to happen once I took my priorities towards, oh, I'm gonna make this about, me being the biggest, being the biggest guy in music, and having, the biggest following, and having, all these things, and having so much of this like built up fame. It was me kind of losing that as a priority, and more so of me just being like, hey, I absolutely love this music thing. So I'm going to make that first. And I don't know how it looks, but it's more,
Mm-hmm.
it was for me, it was definitely just a heart posture fix, that I just needed to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what did that actually look like? It looked like just meeting the right people at the right time. So for me, I mean, one thing I would do, during this whole time, mind you, is I would just use social media, and I would direct message every single music director you could think of. If I went through this right now, you can name, I mean, you can name anyone out of Blackstone, Kyrie Tyler, Derek Cobbs. Go through my whole list, and all have messages of me trying to DM these guys, being like, "Hey, I'm a drummer. If you ever need a guy, like if you ever need a sub, if you ever need a dude, just maybe even just be there for rehearsal, just because your drummer's not there that day, like I am your guy."
So how did you even find these music directors?
So these are, I mean, this is right here is a huge thing. Do your research. It's so everyone's on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's there. So all it is being like, all right, who am I a fan of? Whether it be for an artist, for a band, and then you just look them up, and you see who they're following, and you just check on their posts and see who's tagged, and then you're like, oh, this is the drummer for,
Mm.
like, for Kyrie's example. Oh, here's his band. Oh, sweet. Here's like Clemens Poindexter. Here's
Yeah.
the music director, Kyrie. Oh, here's their bassist, Al Parker. It's one of those, and now, okay, now you're able to see and cross reference all these guys of being like, oh, Kyrie's also with, the Beyonce team.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, who's this guy? Diamond Johnson, Oh, who's this guy? Oh, this is all the 1,500 nothing people. Okay, sick. So this is, you kind of start to kind of map
Yeah.
out this whole world. And, I will say, I am at a 99.99% fail rate for all of
Sure.
those direct messages.
Yeah.
99.999. there is only one dude out of any of those dudes who took up my offer, and that was the guy. His name is Drew, Drew Chafee. But yeah, I messaged him and he followed me back, and then probably for a year, actually, no, I'll kind of do a little bit more of the story because out of the church scene, there's this guy who was around my church and played, phenomenal guitar player, but he was the guy who he's also within the professional music world, and he was the dude who was like, oh, this Drew guy, he's a music director as well. You guys have the same type of personality, the same type of vibe. I think you guys would really work well. So it was one of those things where I was kind of referred by a friend who already knew
Mm-hmm.
him. But
Mm-hmm.
so I guess kind of cold opening a bunch of music directors,
Yeah.
having no
Yeah.
mutuals, you have a higher likelihood if you guys have a
Sure.
mutual friend.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this Drew dude, he literally, I mean, the coolest, he was the guy who took a chance with me. So we were at one day, I was like, all right, you know, sure, it might feel scary. I'm sure it might, sure you have all those emotions of being like having, your self-doubt and self-worth, but you just kind of have to go for it. So yeah, for his example, I was just like, hey, let's meet up for coffee. We're both in Los Angeles. Like, I'll pay for everything. You just pick the place and time and I will be there. And then, he was the dude who's like, sick, let's do it. He was the guy. So going back to the whole kind of heart change of it going from, oh, I'm only here just to get something out of you.
Hmm.
It could have just been like I showed up and I was like, oh, sick. So when am I gonna get the
Yeah.
One Republic gig? Since
Yeah. Yeah.
he music directs for those guys.
Okay.
It's or like when am I gonna get all these huge big old artists that I could play for? It went from that towards, okay, how can I help you?
Yeah.
I love music and I see what you're doing, and I'm a huge fan of what you're doing.
Yeah.
How can I be a part of that so I can grow this alongside with you,
Hmm.
under you, So I mean, that was kind of how we started our relationship and friendship, was kind of just out of that, just out of like, okay, I think you're the coolest guy. I think your vision musically is so awesome. How can you teach me to basically, do what
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, so it literally, that stuff starts out with, for me, I was like, hey, I'll just be your personal assistant for, there's like a 4 or 5 month span after that from where I just kind of showed up to, whether it be a music studio, that one of his friends was working at, or whether it be his own. I just show up there, do the coffee runs, do, kind of clean vacuum the house, do all those chores. Maybe, of course, I'll go along to rehearsal and, grab
Yeah.
some cables and stuff. But, that right there, that stuff is one of those things where it's like a good friend of mine, was also, he's a professional violinist. He does all the weddings, that's what he does.
Hmm.
But his thing is, he was this violinist friend I have. He got, a good following. Like, he's probably at like 100,000 followers on Instagram. He got that following from COVID, where he would just start doing these like random serenades for people, who would just pay to, come outside, right outside of his house. And he would just do those things for people. He would just drive out, go play a song to,
Wow.
whoever's mom that they can't see.
Yeah.
And he told me, he was like, yeah, I did that because there was no one else who was doing that thing. And there was no one else who honestly were willing to do those things, So that's what, it's kind of a weird, different thing, but that's what the advice that I got for that. He was
Hmm.
like, make sure you do all the things that nobody else out of their own pride is willing to do. I think that's, for me, I mean, that's what absolutely changed the game,
Yeah.
because you could just kind of wait around like everyone else and be like, all right, I'm just waiting until I get, an actual tour offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's doing that.
Yeah.
No one wants to, no one wants to go and, fold someone's laundry,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, no one else wants to, do all these things, but that's what
So
we're
then,
here for.
How
That's what
did
we're here
that?
for.
Yeah, yeah. How did that lead to then? The open door opportunities of going on tour for you.
That it was one of those things where he knew I could play drums. Everyone knows that someone can play. It's a low threshold. Your a musical ability in the music industry is a lower threshold than people think.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to show up, play some parts. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Especially for pop music.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about everything else that's around it. It's about who you are as a person. It's about
Mm-hmm.
all those things. So yeah, I mean, it was just literally just a matter of time where until one of his management companies that he really works with, they had this new kid who was his name is Henry Veras, and he got an offer to open up for this much larger artist. Her name is Jessie Murph. She's like the country pop fusion thing.
Okay.
Yeah, she literally just played at the VMAs last night. So
Oh wow,
she's
cool.
yeah, she dropped an album. She's doing big stuff. But like that was like it was a huge 35 show tour
Hmm.
playing, the venues were, like the 3,000 cap. And this guy somehow, he got the offer. And these guys, they had a low budget for this tour, Obviously, that's the reality of touring. A lot of times, these are,
Yeah.
they, sure, it's this huge tour, but sometimes, you just can't find the money,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
or you just don't have it, and that's the reality. Um, so and that's the coolest part, So I mean, so he came to Drew and it was like, hey, we need to find, a couple of guys to go around in a van around this whole country, you know, and just do this thing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, obviously I know the guy.
Hmm.
And that's the thing, Whereas again, is one of those kind of pride things where it's like everyone's waiting just to get on the bus
Yeah.
and have them drive to you and get off the bus and already have your drum set up by a drum tech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's waiting for those things. No one wants to pay dues. So yeah, for him, he was like, oh, I know the guy who's gonna do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was all last August, September.
Wow. Yeah.
Literally, yeah, a year ago from right now. Is when this tour happened. And yeah, I mean, not only did I play drums, but I also, that was the time where it was me, it was the artist, Henry, it was a guitar keys player, one of my buddies that I was able to bring on. And then it was a media photographer guy.
Wow.
And we're just in the van and we just had to follow a bus. And sometimes, like one night, we played a show in Salt Lake City and we had to be in Denver the next day. And you have to drive 10 hours that night,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sleep, stop, halfway through and sleep for only 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that's just the life,
Yep.
you know? And
Absolutely.
so, I mean, that tour right there, that was my first tour. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, you know, when you play those shows and you do this thing and you're able to be and just have community with people, and just all kind of be connected with music, man. I mean, that's what energizes you. That's what,
Yeah.
gives you
Sure.
just it's just so awesome. So I mean, yeah, there's some tough realities of starting to tour, but it doesn't even compare to how much fun this thing is.
So then, what would you say? What is like? What do you, if you had a? Let me rephrase that. What are some things that you're working towards in your career that you'd like to see happen? Now you've accomplished these really cool things. What are you looking and working towards?
I'd say it's just there's two ways. There's the kind of like end goals that you have in your head, whether it be whether it be playing bigger show, or whether it be doing more, or whether that be playing drums or even music directing. That stuff. There's that part, and then there's the, oh, what am I looking towards with myself as a musician? Because I could play at these tours, and every tour I get off um and when I finish, I'm like, oh, I just want to get better at playing drums.
Sure.
this is awesome. This is the best thing, you know. It doesn't inspire me to be like, oh, sweet, I did it. I'm gonna go hang up my
Mm.
drumstick somewhere and call it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I don't want to smell the roses, you
yeah.
know.
Mm.
I want to keep on going, you know,
Mm.
and every single time, you know, I finish, you know, especially I'm thinking about that most right now because, you know, I just finished, you know, the tour that I was on.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, sick. I want to keep going. I want to keep on practicing and get better, you know, and improve of what I'm doing, you know, the whole skill set.
Yeah.
And I think if you're able to maintain that practice of being just a student of this whole thing and keep on doing that, you know, that's what's gonna, that's what's for me is kind of like
Yeah.
that. There's that half of it that will then reach, you know, cool, not even like end goals, but cool milestones, whether that be playing arenas or playing, you know,
Yeah.
for me as a Los Angeles guy, playing SoFi, you know, or
Yeah.
whether,
Yeah.
you know, or whatever, you know, Madison for you
Yeah.
or wherever that,
Exactly. For sure.
wherever it could be for you, you know.
Yeah.
But
For
I
sure,
mean,
man.
again, dude, those are just cool little milestones to hit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so much more behind this
Yeah.
thing.
No, it's super interesting, man. It sounds like you've had a really interesting journey along the way, and you're just getting started, man. I'm excited to see what comes for you.
Yeah,
I want to be respectful of your time. So one of the questions that I like to wrap all these conversations up with is, what is one thing that you know now in your career that you wish you knew when you first started out?
phenomenal question, dude. Phenomenal question.
Thank you, thank you.
I'm trying to think that's outside of what I'm already, you know,
Yeah,
saying.
I mean,
I
whatever you
mean,
think is the case, you know.
one thing I wish I knew now, I'd say for me, it's hard, and I think it's kind of is the thing for whoever's trying to think that this impossible thing is possible, is just to trust yourself and just the trust of what you're kind of, you know, what's kind of set on your heart to
Mm-hmm.
do. You know, whether I'm sure for you, there's so many different things that you want to do, you know, as a songwriter, as a musician, you know. Um, for me too, you know, like when I started this thing, I just didn't know if it was like a possibility,
Sure.
you know. Um, and it's hard because you want to, you know, do these things. And there's so many times where you want to quit. There's so
Yeah,
many times
sure.
I before I met the jury guy, I was about to just kind of be like, oh, I guess maybe I should just get, you know, some office job.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'll just try one more, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
try one more thing. Which obviously, you know, which obviously got me into a much, you know, likable spot. But yeah, for me is you have to trust yourself, man.
Mm-hmm.
You have to trust of what you're doing is the right thing. And you
Mm-hmm.
honestly, you're the only person who knows you, and you're the only
Mm-hmm.
person who's on your own path of where you're getting to,
Yeah.
whether, you know, wherever the road leads, you
Yeah.
know. So it's that mixed in with the only way you know that something's impossible is if you've tried it, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
So I mean, you know, so I was like, all right, let's see if, you know, doing what literally what my dream job is right now, you know, if doing this whole thing, you know, let's see if it's possible or not.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that just little nuggets. And then the best way of, you know, because for me, I mean, I want to be, you know, completely clear is I'm insanely lucky to be where I'm at right now at 22 years old, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people don't, you know, get to have that, you know, get to have that like privilege to do this, you know, but it's also like everyone's going to get there in time. And the only
Mm.
people who don't are the ones who quit.
Wow, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, literally, it's just the perseverance of you got to keep on going. And you, sure, it feels like you're just kind of running into a pit of nothing sometimes. Sure, it's, you know, sure, you feel discouraged. Sure, you have all this stuff. But literally, if you keep on going and you do what you know is right because you kind of know the path of where you're trying to go and you're getting in with the right people who also resonate with the same things that you resonate with,
Yeah.
you know, it's literally is only a matter of time.
Yeah. No,
So
that's really good, man.
I wish I was, you know, a 19-year-old kid, you know, that I wish I would definitely, it would give me less sleepless nights.
Sure. I understand that for sure, man. Absolutely. Well, much wisdom coming for you. I appreciate you taking the time, and if you could hang out for 30 more seconds, I do want to say thank you so much for, first of all, you coming on the channel, but also I want to say thank you to every single person that watched this or listened to this, whatever the case
Yeah.
was. Definitely go check out all of Malachi's stuff on social media, and stay tuned for all the exciting things that he's going to be doing. So thank you so much. Best way to support this channel is checking out my own original music, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great day. God bless and peace out.